the regular meeting of the Neshoba Regional School Committee. We are meeting via Zoom. And so at this time, would folks stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty
liberty and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you. Okay, I have one citizen's comment to read, and I was sent an email by Karen and Bert Gould, and asked me to read this letter, and it's actually an email that was sent to a teacher at the Lancaster Middle School, and I think Mrs. Friend was CC'd on it, and so I'm going to read it. Good morning, Mr. Owens. I have printed your email for Kayla and discussed it with her. I will have Kayla reach out to you before I leave for work, which I will do at 11. Kayla's mother and I are both considered essential employees. My wife is a certified nurse midwife, and I am a manager at Logan with TSA. Neither of us have been at home during this pandemic fiasco, in my opinion. Thus, Kayla has lacked some of the structure and supervision that perhaps others may have had. That, combined with the factors that place Kayla on an IEP, make her a part of a very vulnerable and at-risk cohort, having no risk to speak of from COVID-19. We are very much appreciative of your supervision and oversight. Without it, the cumulative negative impact of these events would be even greater. The loss to our children of being deprived of both their education and the socialization that education provides is far beyond what any of our governmental decision makers have imagined or considered in their calculus for these events. We have overreacted and lacked courageous leadership at the highest levels of our communities. We haven't protected the at-risk population very well, and we have undervalued and deprived the rest of our society of their basic human needs. I'm extremely disillusioned by all of this and the role that our governing bodies have played in it. Our grocery stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, and our pharmacies somehow find an effective way to operate. In each of these stores, you will find every single age group and socioeconomic class going about their business, stocking shelves, buying items, and living their lives without the sky falling, each returning to their homes afterwards. Why couldn't we have done the same for the rest of our society? Once again, government picks the winners and the losers, and there have been an enormous number of losers in this, far, far beyond those at risk from this virus. In short, it has been an enormous disaster and a complete failure of leadership. I am disgusted by all of it. Don't think that the cabin fever this nation has endured from this quarantine sentence is not a critical element in what is happening in every major city across our nation right now. Some of us believe the length and breadth of this self-imposed incarceration was not without some ill-intentioned design that we are now regrettably reaping from this horrendous experience. The post-mortem of all of this will be a stunning rebuke and condemnation of our incredible short-sightedness, panic, and stupidity. I am so disillusioned by the mindlessness of it all. As I kiss my wife goodbye for yet another day delivering babies, no one gave the memo to those pregnant women out there. And as I prepare to make sure every passenger on those few flights remaining are properly screened by the staff under my supervision. To sweep all of this aside by saying, at least you didn't come down with COVID-19, is a banal rationalization to justify what we have done. The consequences we have all been condemned to suffer have been far worse than the risks and death toll we all endure day in and day out from the annual flu, car accidents, and urban center violence experienced each and every weekend. Please continue to give us the benefit of your ongoing assessments, and we will do the best we can. Stay well, and please stay working. So I did give Mr. Gould a call. Just to clarify, I wanted to let him know that we do not typically, and I know I've mentioned several times of how the guidelines for citizens' comments have changed, but I had permission from him to mention information about his family, and he wanted to be very clear that he had nothing but good things to say about Mr. Owens and Mrs. Friend's leadership at the middle school, but there is a tremendous amount of frustration and anger that he expressed with leadership. He feels that in terms of the way that schools have been handled, that it was the easy way out, and that we, at the end of the day, are doing a great disservice to our students, and that we have let them down. So I usually don't speak to a comment, but where it was in a little different format, I just wanted to provide the clarification. So that's the only citizen's comment I have. So I want to move to new business at this time, and I'm going to turn it over to Brooke to curate
Sure.
middle and high school survey results.
I'll tee it up quickly, and that's exactly it. And actually, Dr. McGuire has been working very closely with through all of this, and I think in part because so much of it tends to file back to the teaching and learning unit, and the information that they can glean from it. And if we're able to make refinements or tweaks, then we do that. And so he's really been the point person on this. So I will turn it over to him to speak with the principals as well.
Great. So I'll need to share my screen. I'm not sure if I need to get control of the host again.
The lead is in charge. She calls.
Right, she is. The lead is always in charge. Okay, good.
She just, okay.
Can we see that?
Yes.
Right. So similar to a couple of weeks ago when the elementary principals came to report out on the surveys that were sent out to their families in our K through 5 schools, tonight we're joined by our middle school principals, Mr. Grady, Mr. Bates, and Mrs. Friend, as well as our high school principal, Mr. Cullinane, to report out on what they surveyed their communities with as well. So I'm just going to kind of give an overview and then hand it over to the 4 of them. And then similarly, I'll close it out and talk a little bit about the key takeaways that we have from their surveys, as well as next steps as we're obviously looking towards the summer and looking towards what the fall might look like and what this data can provide for us moving forward. So just in terms of the surveys as a whole, these surveys were sent out to each of the middle school families in all 3 towns of Lancaster, Bolton, and Stowe in grades 6 through 12. And then at the high school as well, it was sent out to families, but at the high school level, they also created a separate student survey, which was sent out to our students in grades 9 through 12. And Mr. Cullinane will report out on the findings of the student survey as well. And that was in response to some requests from school committee members to certainly get some student survey data back as well. They were multiple choice questions, as well as an opportunity for parents, families, and students to provide some answers in some open response form, as well as some specific feedback. And the focus in these surveys, similar to the elementary, was really around time on learning, what that looked like, engagement level in terms of the amount of time students were spending on coursework, as well as engaged in two-way communication, whether it be video conferencing through the Google Classroom, and the variety of two-way communication that we have provided for students and staff, as well as feedback that teachers are able to provide for our students. They also surveyed on the types of activities and resources that were being used and utilized. You'll see that each slide will speak to the benefits and challenges of our remote learning model and module, as the elementary teachers did as well. And then some suggestions. They offered opportunities for families as well as students to make suggestions and offer what are some of those key takeaways from this first go around with remote learning since March. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Principal Grady, who's the principal over at the Hale Middle School. And he's going to talk a little bit about the survey that he handed out and sent out to his families and stuff.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. It seems like forever that I last saw you all. But thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I do just want to start off with saying we returned a bunch of our students, almost all of our students' belongings last week, and then a few stragglers this week. And it was so exciting to see some of our students again pull through those parking lots. It really sort of rejuvenated Mr. Perkins and I's morale. The staff is in the building today, tomorrow, and Friday to clean out their classrooms and prepare for the summer. Just to jump right into it, we sent out our parent survey on 5/1/20. We had 158 respondents, which is just about half of our parent population, and there was a balance of from each grade. All around 35%, give or take a few, in each grade level was represented. I think one of the big takeaways was that 80% of parents reported a 4 or 5, and that was a question on how manageable remote learning has been for their family. So 80% works out to be roughly 128 respondents that said 4 or 5, and the scale was 1 being impossible and 4 or 5 being very manageable. 70% of parents reported that their child was engaged in schoolwork for 60 minutes or more a day, which is kind of right there where we want them to be. And then 78% of parents reported that they needed to assist their child for anywhere between 0 to 30 minutes a day as that child was engaged in remote learning. So those seem to be, to us, those seem to be good numbers for how much students were working and how much parents needed to assist their students in that work. A couple of the major takeaways. The types, what we heard is that the types of the assignments teachers were pushing out were hitting the mark for our students and families. They were, what I mean by that is that they were challenging, but not impossible. They were not highly reliant upon screens. That was one thing that we heard, that it wasn't just that students needed to do everything from their computer. And there was an ample amount of balance when it came to student independence and getting their work done. Parents another takeaway is that parents were very eager to see the direct instruction with staff to begin. And what I mean by that is that this was, so 5/1 was that's when we sent the survey, and that's about a week after teachers started to dabble with Google Meet. That was following a pretty comprehensive set of guidelines that was produced by T&L. Thank you, Teaching and Learning, for that. Several comments from our parents centered on the types of video conferencing we should use. There was a lot of, sort of suggestions around, we should be using Zoom, or we should be using this other platform, we should be using the Microsoft platform. But I think for us, the point behind that is that at that point, they were ready for us to start to engage students in that video conferencing sort of world. It was no surprise, I think, for us to hear that parents reported that students were struggling with not seeing their friends. In fact, even just anecdotally, when we saw students that were coming through the parking lot last week to pick up their belongings, we would ask, what's the hardest thing? What's the best thing about remote learning? And almost universally, every student said the hardest thing is not seeing their friends. So it doesn't come as a surprise, but what it did do is it allowed us to start to ramp up our video conferencing in places like our nursing and our guidance staff, where we could start to reach out to students and have that personal face-to-face interaction that was absent prior to that. Many families reported that there were some unforeseen positive things that have come out of the remote learning. For instance, they were seeing increased independence, and that their children seemed to enjoy this sort of work at your own pace environment, where they were getting up, they were getting right into their studies. And a lot of the parents reported that they found that the additional family time and the time for their students to do the things that they're interested in outside of school, those more leisurely things, was a nice benefit in this whole situation. So with that, we did make quite a few adjustments, and this was as a result of the direct feedback from parents. What we heard was that students were struggling with the elongated periods of time before assignments were due. We had initially set out and saying that on Mondays and Wednesdays was a science and math day, and Tuesdays and Thursdays were an ELA, and it was more of a humanities day, ELA and social studies. And then Fridays were our related arts classes, and all the assignments were due on Friday. And I think what what we heard from parents was that elongated approach led to more procrastination in our students. So we tightened it up, and we had more of the assignments that, if they were assigned on Monday, they were due on Tuesday. So that was one thing that we altered as a result of their feedback. We also retooled as a staff the level of feedback that we were providing. Each team, grade level team and related arts team, were approaching it a little bit differently. And we needed to do some calibration. What we were seeing was some grade levels were providing an immense amount of feedback. And when you compare that to our related arts team, who they see every child in the building, that it seemed like the related arts teachers weren't providing the same amount of feedback. So we had a really rich discussion about what deserves feedback, what is reasonable feedback, and how much feedback we should be giving to students. So there was a sort of a building-wide calibration that happened as a result of the feedback from parents. Another thing that came up was our communication and our scheduling. So a lot of what was happening at the middle school is students were receiving their work through Google Classroom. That's not necessarily something that teachers were seeing. That parents were seeing. So what we decided to do then was to post our learning menus directly up on Monday. I would send out an announcement every day, and I would put the links to our learning menus for each grade level directly into that email. And that allowed parents to just, with one click, be able to see what their child had to do for the whole week if they were in 7th grade, Monday to Friday, versus where they'd have to go to our website, which would link them to the remote learning website for the district. And it seemed like it was multiple steps for them. So putting out there very clearly the communication and the schedule for each week was I think helpful. We set up a schedule for students who were really exceptional students, who were going above and beyond what we were putting out and needed more. This was certainly an area where we needed to have some growth. So we started to create some extension work, and we included this in at least a once or twice a week virtual meeting where students who were doing the engagement work could sit with that teacher. If it was a math teacher, they might sit with Mr. Melbourne and review some of the challenge problems that he put out. But that provided those students with not just challenge work, but an opportunity to brief what they did directly with their teacher in a sort of virtually live situation. The other thing that I think that's not on here that I did just want to point out is that we increased the amount of days that we were conducting our Google Meets. We started off sort of with a smaller amount. Not really. I think honestly, our staff and I were a little nervous about getting into this virtual learning environment. So we started pretty small, and after the feedback that we received from parents, we realized that students needed more options. Not like whether it was a morning and an afternoon option to meet with their teacher. But we also started to include, and I said this before, conducting Google Meets with our nurses, our guidance staff, our specialists. And to date, all of those folks, including our IAs and even Patrick and I, we run our own Google Meets with certain students, and it's sort of a mentor meeting where we check in with students to make sure that they've completed their work for the week, and also do just sort of a well check for them. That was also something that came out of the survey, that FaceTime was critical. So those are the most salient points. I'm not sure, Todd, if we're waiting for questions until the end, or how you want to approach this.
I think last time Kathy wanted to wait until the end for questions, so, but I'll defer to Kathy on that.
Yeah, I think let's wait until everyone, well, let's do 6A and then folks can ask questions, and then we can devote our entire focus to Steve Cullinane in his presentation.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mr. Grady. We'll move on to Mr. Bates, principal of the Florence Sawyer School.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you again. I will get right into the survey data that you've heard from me 2 weeks ago with regard to our elementary surveys. So this happened in the same window. So in terms of the context, we surveyed around the end of April, left it open through May 4th. So it coincided with the transition to the next tier of remote learning. And we had 56 surveys representing about 23% of our students, grades 6 through 8. The surveys, parent surveys, representing 23 of all of the students in grades 6 through 8. Our respondents reported that students spent, the average time was around over 2, but under 4 hours per day on remote learning, which I think you'll find similar data in all of our 3 survey results. At the middle level, the student engagement with remote learning still to this day remains high. We're in CPT, common planning times, with all of our grade level teachers. And one of the elements of those common planning times is to check in with the team and find out if I or the assistant principals need to check in with families or students if there's a drop off. And we really haven't seen much of that yet at all. So we're very excited about that. Our key takeaways were that there was a lot of support from our parents for the teachers and all of their efforts, and consequently all of the efforts of the Department of Teaching and Learning, as Principal Grady already mentioned, in this transition. The middle school students, we have found, and I think I teed this up a little bit in the elementary presentation, the older you get, the further along in school you get, the more likely you are to be self-directed and independent, and consequently the amount of time, which you saw in Principal Grady's presentation as well, with parents having to support students, goes down the older that the kids get. They found that the teacher created video lessons, project-based activities, and online programs were ranked as among the most meaningful and engaging activities. One of the things that we found as a key takeaway, both anecdotally and quantitatively, is that there was a lot of desire to move toward live interaction for the social emotional aspects, as well as just the connections, the interconnections with each other, with the class, with the teacher, in addition to the feedback that they were getting. And again, the context of this survey is that this happened shortly before we rolled that out. So the way that we've responded to that, again, similar to the other middle schools, we added a grade level virtual advisory program and subdivided our students. I have an advisory, the assistant principals, the specialists, and all of the classroom teachers and instructional assistants. And it's been a great addition to the work that we've been doing to give them an opportunity to just talk to one another, to talk with us, to play some games together, to interact, and just have that time together. We from the time of the survey data moving up to this present day, we've had more frequent and live interactions with students, and those have taken different forms in terms of being available for direct feedback in a live video kind of thing, to some instruction, and of course the advisory program. One of the things that I think, this data tells me, as we look at our school and what that holds for us for the future, is that things have gone well. We are continuing to grow. One of the things that we're finding that we have had to build in more are the idea of executive function strategies in a virtual format. So, for example, as Principal Grady said, that students will be able to get their lessons on a Friday or a Monday morning and move forward with them at a pacing that works for them. But there are times when that can bog down, and you know that when you're leaving one class to another, a teacher is saying, write this down in your agenda book, or make sure you do this first and do that. And so some of those, it's about capturing some of those elements in a virtual form so that they have, especially middle school students, have the scaffolding to be at their optimal best. And but overall, in addition to the elementary survey data, we were pleased with the data. I think it validates that all of the hard work that's been invested in this process. It validates things that we're doing well, and it gives us some areas to continue to grow in as well.
Thank you. All set? Joel?
Yes.
Okey doke.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Okay. So I
We'll,
think,
we'll move right on to Mrs. Friend at the Luther Burbank Middle
thanks.
School. You bet.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire, and thank you, Mr. Bates, and thank you, Mr. Grady. I am pleased to report out on Luther Burbank Middle School. Those of you who know me know that I like to speak about Luther Burbank Middle School, so I appreciate the opportunity to do so this evening, to speak about our survey results. We administered our survey the week of April 20th. We had 21% participation rate, which we don't think is great. However, we have met with the Luther Burbank Middle School School Council twice since then, once right after the survey was administered to take a look at the data together, and then again in May. And the council believes, as do I, from the feedback that I've received from our families, that the survey results do appear to be representative of our school community to a greater extent. We had, much like Mr. Grady and Mr. Bates had shared as well, about a little over 80% of our respondents indicated that their child was able to work independently or with minimal support on the remote learning provided. I will make a note that that remaining 19% does reflect families of students in our district program of PACE. And we do know that those students benefit from additional support as they're working towards becoming independent learners. Close to 70% of the respondents reported that time engaged with remote learning averaged around 3 hours or less per day. We had a little over 10% of respondents indicated that their child was spending between 4 and 5 hours a day on remote learning, and the remainder shared that the time varied. And so this is an area that we've been working on as we work to ensure not sameness, but consistency within grade levels and across grade levels in terms of the experience for our students. As Mr. Bates had indicated, the engagement of students at the middle level remains high to varying degrees of engagement, but still connected and learning with us. I took a look at our engagement this week for the purpose of sharing with you tonight, and we have just about approximately 90% of our students engaged in learning, and that's a true testament to the efforts of our teachers who are working really hard to create engaging opportunities for our students to keep them excited about learning to the end of the school year. I'll give you a short anecdote to illustrate. Our 8th grade students are finishing up a civics unit and learning about local and state government, and Laura Pagington, our 8th grade social studies teacher, has invited 3 local officials to come in this week to speak with our 8th graders about local and state government. So our town administrator, Orlando Pacheco, came in today and spoke with our 8th graders, and I was able to attend. He did a fabulous job, and we're very, very grateful for his support of our kids today. Tomorrow, State Representative Naughton will be joining our students, and then on Friday, Senator Dean Tran is coming. So these are the kinds of efforts that our teachers are working on to really help amplify the learning and keep the kids just going right to the end. And the kids had great questions, and it's just really exciting to watch and help support. kudos and shout out to our teachers who are working so hard. They're just amazing. In terms of key takeaways and adjustments made as a result of those key takeaways, I'm going to talk about those simultaneously, because anytime we get some constructive feedback, we always work to make an improvement and an adjustment. So they go hand in hand, I think. But again, just to reiterate before I get into that constructive feedback, the positive feedback that we've received from families on the teachers' hard work, their communication, and their commitment to doing what's right for our kids has just been consistent, and even up through this week. So a huge shout out to our teachers at Luther Burbank, and a huge shout out to all the Neshoba teachers who are working really, really hard to do what's right for our kids. We see it every single day. In terms of constructive feedback provided, we received feedback from families in April that families were prioritizing academic content work over related arts or special areas. Their focus was on the academic content areas in some cases, and not as much for the related arts. And so in an effort to address that, we took a look at adding a different dimension in addition to the learning plans that we're presenting to students related to related arts. So we've added opt-in enrichment opportunities for our students. For example, we are offering opt-in art enrichment on Thursday afternoons for our students, health and mindfulness enrichment opportunities for students. Our chorus and instrumental ensembles are still continuing to meet, and as well, we've also added grade level advisories, much like Mr. Bates had shared. And you may remember our students who presented on advisory, I think it was in January or February, and that you can't let that enthusiasm go. And those have been great opportunities for students to get together, to share how they're feeling, let us know how we can continue to support them, and just have fun, which is really important not to forget that they're kids and we care about them. And our counselors and our nurse have been facilitating those grade level advisories, which has added, I think, help to our grade level teachers. Has helped complement the strength of those teams. And of course, teachers are able to attend, as well as myself and Mr. Grant have been attending as well. Much like Mr. Bates and Mr. Grady, we also received consistent feedback from our parents about a desire to increase the consistency and frequency of Google Meet sessions for students. And so since April, we have done that. As a result, teachers have increased opportunities for students to meet with them. Students have opportunities in every grade level every day to have Google Meet sessions. Families shared further that it was helpful for them for these sessions to be on consistent days and times. That's helped with planning purposes. So we have done that for our families as well. We're also letting families know when these Google Meet sessions are happening directly on those learning plans that we're posting every Monday on our website, so families can plan accordingly. Internally, we have a Google Meet calendar for staff to help with the coordination of Google Meets so that we're not stepping on one another's toes. So for example, a small group math session is not happening at the same time as, say, for example, an ELA Google Meet session. So internally, behind the scenes, that's been helpful. And then concurrently and finally, we're always working to find silver linings in everything. As well, I can tell you that we've directly targeted students' skills on writing a well-composed email. So, Mr. Cullinane, the kids are going to be coming to you, our 8th graders in particular, being able to write a very well-composed email. As well, we have worked on skills within Google Meets. We recognize that that's a developing skill for students. That's a new platform, a new form in which to communicate. So we tapped our speech language pathologist, Valerie Bay-Ranavan, who did an awesome job of presenting to staff on effective ways to engage students during Google Meets, effective interaction strategies during Google Meets. And we've seen a great increase in student engagement and positive interaction during Google Meets. And I think that that's a important life skill for our students to have too as they move forward into the world, into the workforce eventually. So again, we're always looking for those silver linings, and our kids and all of us are going to come out stronger on the other end. But we do see this as a work in progress, and we continue to evolve and grow. And we are so proud of our students and so grateful for our families for their continued partnership and commitment to joining us. So that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for the principals? Elaine?
Thank you. Those presentations were great. And I just wanted to say I've personally heard probably the most positive feedback at the middle school level. So you guys are doing something really well, and hopefully we can take those lessons and spread them out to age-appropriate solutions at the other levels as well. I'd like to hear more about these virtual advisories. Are the leaders voluntary? What are the major roadblocks to getting that as a more broader based program?
Laura?
I can just speak to it just because on my screen I'm right next to Elaine. So we curriculum-wise, we use the developmental designs approach, which is the middle level version of responsive classroom. And developmental designs has fortunately shared virtual advisory lessons for this time period. So if you're connected with developmental designs as we are, we've been using those kind of as a platform and a stepping stone to adjust our advisory format. So when our students presented in January, remember they were talking about the greeting and the activity and the share and the wrap up. We're still using that format, just virtually based on the guidance from developmental designs, and it's worked really well. And as well, we're focusing on, sorry.
Sorry, these are the same groups that you had been doing in person, like the same kids and the same teachers?
Nope. So what we've done, and I think Mr. Bates, I'm not sure how he's approached it, but this is opt-in. This is optional for our students, where when we were in school, it was a scheduled part of the day. And so our counselors actually, for the purpose of our virtual advisory, are facilitating. They've taken the lead on these advisory groups with the support of our school nurse and the support of myself and Mr. Grant. And teachers can supplement too, but they're not the primaries here. And that model has served us well because the teachers are working so hard on extending themselves with the Google Meet and the planning for these engaging learning experiences, that they were really appreciative that we took that on and can attend, and they're not functioning as the primaries in terms of planning. And it's also been helpful, I think, because our counselors have personally invited some students who have been more fragile along the way and said, hey, why don't you come join? And so we've seen some reticent learners and some reticent students show up, and that's been awesome.
Thank you.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So at Florence Sawyer School, it is essentially a different means to an end. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't give all due credit to Mark Levine and Caitlin Angulo, our assistant principals, who sort of developed this idea and built it out. We have all of our teachers that are willing and able to opt in to have small group advisories, but the planning was done by Mark and Caitlin, very similar to, as Mrs. Friend described, using the developmental designs curriculum and some interactive games and whatnot. So the planning, it sort of comes to the advisor in a ready format, and so each grade levels from 5th through 8th. We subdivided the students and in our case created a Google Classroom for advisory, and it functions as an opt-in kind of program for the kids. They've got a lot going on. Some can be there, some can't, and so in that way, it's very similar to Luther Burbank, and the curriculum and approaches are very similar as well.
Thank you. Kyle?
You're muted.
We've taken a bit of a different approach. We really address sort of surgically the students who we were seeing the most minimal amount of work and engagement from, and we created not advisories. We created these mentor groups, and what we did is we selected some of our most talented IAs and we deployed them at specific times to meet with. We called it like a Finish It Up Friday, where the IAs would meet with groups of maybe 3 to 5 students, and they would and they would check in with those students. It could be students maybe who had experienced loss, a parent or who was sick, or a grandparent or a family member who might have passed. It wasn't like teletherapy or telehealth. It was more, like I said, it was an opportunity to circle those kids up at the end of the week to make sure that there was an adult aside from their teacher, and not in a large, 25 or 30 person meeting that allowed that personal contact with students. Right now, we have 5 of those advisory, we call them mentor meetings, that are happening across the grade levels. And they're run by some nurses, IAs. Like I said, Patrick and I each run one, and our guidance counselor.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. First, sorry about the distractions here. I can't help but laugh at the things they're
Part
saying.
of the meeting.
Talking about incredibly serious topics. But no, I think that's great. And if this thing drags out longer, I think those types of programs are going to become more and more important. So it's great to see that they're getting some traction and they're working so that they can be kind of extended and improved if this thing does go on longer.
Thanks. Other questions? Oh, Mike.
Yeah, just to echo what Elaine said, I really appreciate you sharing the results of the survey and administering the survey. A couple questions. I'm wondering how will we use the data from surveys at both levels, at the elementary and the middle school level, to differentiate our approach? Should we have to do this all over again in the fall? In other words, how are the elementary learners and the middle school learners similar, and how are they kind of separate?
Joel?
As the only principal here for both levels, I guess I'll field that one if that's okay. So I think in partnership with the Department of Teaching and Learning, it's been a really fluid process. And again, I just have to echo my gratitude for that partnership. When we got feedback at the elementary level about Gmail, for example, and opening that up, Dr. McGuire had the conversation with all of us, and it was Mrs. Friend and Mr. Grady said, this is a skill we need to have coming into the middle school, so we're in support of it as well. So I think the feedback is ongoing. I'm sure I speak for the other principals as well when I say that, we want the feedback to keep coming in. The survey is not, it's at a fixed moment in time, but we want to know on an ongoing basis what's working and what isn't working. And I think, I'm just grateful for the multi-layered approach that Superintendent Clenchey has in place in terms of meeting with the principals so frequently, where one idea sort of begets another through a different lens at another grade span.
Thank you. Brooke?
Just a couple of quick points here too. I think, Mike, to just spring from your thinking, I think we really see this, and I'd ask anybody else just to jump in, any of the administrators, but we see this as a continual growth pathway for us. And so we're always talking about ways that we can improve. I mean, we realize that this is almost like a live experiment in life, that we've just been forced on us, and I think that I think all of our personalities are such that we all want to do the very best. We have such a passion for the work and such a passion for doing what's right for children, that's always at the forefront of our work. And so when we have these conversations, we're just always trying to get better at it, to strengthen the infrastructure, to build, and those stepping stones and scaffolding to where we think aiming for that excellence, like scaffolding to excellence, knowing we're not going to get there, but we keep trying, we keep working at it. So I think that these have all been great data points, and we've listened and we've tweaked and we've refined, and I think that we've just gotten stronger and stronger. One of the things I just want to give a couple of shout outs to, the whole Google Meet sessions, that was really, I mean, if you're in high school, you're really used to it. If you're not in high school, you're not used to it. And, Laura, the other day we had a meeting, I think it was just yesterday actually, when we were talking about next year. And it's like, so much of this goes against, especially in those early grades, goes against everything we believe in, philosophically, that we're up against as an obstacle with the COVID-19, the distancing, the social distancing, or the even how we're having to connect with children. It just all feels wrong in so many ways, and so we're trying to always find what feels right, what feels good. And the advisories is a perfect example of that, of the mentor program that Kyle's talking about. And I think that the Google Meet, just the whole notion of that just got better and better with time. And I think the confidence had to grow. I mean, we had teachers that had never, ever used that before. And so it was really, there was a huge learning curve for us, I think. One of the other things that I just want to mention too is I know that we've talked about the virtual field days that are coming up, and I think we're looking at more than just curriculum and instruction. We're looking beyond that to what are some of the fun things that we don't want to lose here either. We've talked about celebrations along the way. We've talked about closure for our kids and our staff. So I mean, I think we're always looking at beyond just pen and paper, so to speak. I think we're always looking at a broader picture. One of the things too that I think excites all of us is the fact that we've seen that engagement with students continue to be at a high level, and that's exciting. Todd and I monitor that consistently. And I know, Laura, you said this too, and I know that, I just want to reiterate how much we owe to our parents right now, who have been so dedicated and committed and just amazing to work with through all of it. Our students, the fact that they have continued to be so well engaged. Our administrators, we create the network and we create the vision, and then, we look to the teachers to do what they've done. And I think I would agree. I don't know who said it tonight, but we are just so proud of Neshoba Regional School District as we sit here right now with all of this. It's been hard work, but I think we feel really good about our efforts and the product, knowing full well though that we will continue to build on the process and try to continue to strengthen our infrastructures. So I just wanted to make a couple comments there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think we will move to, Joe, did you have a question? Okay, sorry, I thought this were.
No, I think Kyle wanted to say something.
I'm sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
Mike, I wanted to go back and just mention something that that came to mind when you had asked that, and that is that, like, we feel like the transitions are difficult for kids at all ages. Whether they're whether it's a normal learning environment and they're transitioning from 5th grade into 6th grade. I think we know that, and I think once we have some better idea of exactly what the fall will look like, I know we've talked about having some district and building based task force that are going to help us to learn from what's happened this year, so that we can roll out really meaningful transitions for our middle school students in particular. That's what I'm thinking about. But I'd also say that a big component of the transition from 5th to 6th and those lessons are getting students into the buildings. Having them come and see the classrooms and see the teachers, and having 5th grade parents night. And without those, we've talked, Laura and I have talked about what are we doing to try to replicate that in some sort of virtual way. And we know it's not going to perfectly replace those in-person, really important transitional moments, but we're certainly going to do our absolute best to try to make sure that students are coming in from the elementary school knowing that it's different. and knowing that there's going to be some challenges, especially if we're in a different learning environment. And just to echo what Superintendent Clunchy said, is that this is the time of year where we're thinking about celebratory things. And just to give you an idea, like on top of like virtual sort of field trips and that, I know that right now in the 7th grade at Hale, there's a 7th grade trivia night. And as I'm sitting here, I'm getting screenshots from Nate Melbourne, and you know, there's 85 kids right now on a trivia night in the 7th grade, and they did that just so it's just purely just a fun social connection, since those things are so missing. And you know, my point is that the all grades are looking to end the year in a really healthy, positive way, so that it makes it easier for a healthy return in the fall. That's it. I'll be quiet now.
No, that's fine. And thanks for sharing that. It's so good to know, because I know we worry about the kids and the impact on them and the social distancing, and the teachers, all of you have gone above and beyond. I was warned against using the word new normal, so I'm not going to say that, but creating, replicating wherever you can the types of experiences that make school so special for kids. And I can't tell you how much I admire the work that you've done, because, you know, you all seem well rested and put together. You know, Joel's had time to do some woodworking, but I know how hard this is, and that you, Leah likes to use the term, the tip of the spear. I love that, Leah. And that's you folks. And things are going well at your school because of the talented teachers that you had, their dedication, but also because of your leadership, and Brooke and Todd, the teams that you have built to lead this district during good times was phenomenal. During a crisis, I think I just am so grateful that we have the folks in place that we do. So thank you so much. And I don't know what we could do to make your life better or whatever, but just our gratitude is just immense for everything you've done. So thank you. Okay, Todd,
Great.
who's
Yeah.
next?
Thank you. Thank you to the middle school principals and for their collaboration on this with me, and for taking the time to get those surveys out and really put all that data together for us. You know, it certainly was an undertaking, so I thank them tremendously. We're going to move on to the high school, and Mr. Cullinane is going to talk specifically about the survey data that came from community and families, as well as survey data that came in from the students in grades 9 through 12. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. They always put the least eloquent guy last, so I appreciate. I can't tell you thank you for having me. The middle school principals have been so helpful putting together all this kind of stuff. I was very nervous about the survey because ours came out about a month after theirs did, and I was afraid that the data would be crazily different, but it really hasn't been that much different at all. We're in the same boat with 50-50. We had about 33% of the parents and 33% of the students that actually responded to our surveys. We did find some information that was important, and I think it's going to help us going forward. Where the middle schools were able to have some takeaways and make some adjustments, we're going to kind of use this as going forward for next year, because we really haven't had an opportunity to analyze the data and bring it forward. We were lucky at the high school in that our senior class is the first kids that had computers. So they've gone 4 years with actually working with these computers, and had 4 years working with Google Classroom, which was super helpful for us, because we kind of hit the road running for the most part when this whole thing went down. But it was crisis management. We were trying to get things done crisis-wise, and I think that the surveys kind of gave us a good feel for what the students and the parents were feeling, and it's very similar to what the middle school parents were feeling. There's a lot of things we can adjust. There's a lot of things we can work on. I really don't want to read everything on a screen for you guys, because I think you can read yourselves, but most of the stuff is very similar. I think one of the takeaways that I got from looking through the surveys was that our MSBA project was to look outside of the box. Well, we're way outside of the box right now. And this is going to be helpful. I really think it's going to be helpful because it's going to give us some opportunities to look at things in a different way, in a different light. And I've been teaching there I taught there for 25 years. And when they asked the question to the teachers, what do you see your classroom looking like? I couldn't imagine that because I've only been in that classroom. So it's hard to look outside the box, but now they're being kind of forced to look outside the box. And that's going to help us down the road, I think. We're looking to put together a group of faculty to look at the surveys, to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then move forward with that. So I'm not as eloquent as those guys are. I apologize. I really do try, but I'm really not. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. It's pretty much all the same stuff that they talked about. We definitely need to work on some professional development of the teachers. I think that Mary Murata does a nice job with some PD stuff with the different types of technology that we can use. And I have to thank Kim Early for helping me put the survey stuff. She coordinated all this stuff for me because I was so worried about the senior stuff. I have to tell you, the senior turn-in takeout yesterday was awesome. It worked perfect. So thank God, I finally got something right. So I hope you guys appreciate that.
Questions for Steve? Oh, Leah. Yeah.
So first of all, Steve, you very much understate how wonderful you are. So I'm not buying it. Also,
don't tell my wife.
So the only thing that I would say is the technological interface needs some attention. And I know that I've already talked to Brooke and Todd about this, and Kathy. I think that when teachers were forced to go online immediately, there was an assumption that because we're one-to-one, because classroom's been there for so long, that we were ready for this transition. So I think that there are far more teachers than we perhaps think that are not fully comfortable yet. And so Todd was saying that professional development is coming. The only thing that I would say, and Todd, I should have emailed this back to you, is I think that the people who often need the professional development might be more willing to shy away from it because it's hard, right? That's a big stretch to make these changes. So I hope that if and when, because I understand that we're going to have some sort of hybrid model next year, possibly, where we're not all going to be sitting in the classroom every day like we always used to, that teachers are going to have to be, I know this isn't my purview, I'm not in charge of teachers at all, and teachers are amazing and they do amazing things every single day. But I think that the technological interface is a place where we need some improvement.
And I would agree with you 100%. You know, this was crisis management. So some teachers were far more adept at jumping right into the computer stuff. For me, look at me, I'm old. So I had a hard time merging a call today. So I understand that. I know that we have some folks that
you did.
It worked though, didn't it?
It did.
We're aware that the teachers, honest to God, the teachers are aware of that. The teachers that are struggling with it are the ones that are reaching out to me the most, and they want to figure out how to make this work. It hasn't been easy. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. It has not been easy at all for a lot of folks because this is a lot different, and the kids are missing out on the interaction between teachers. High school teachers are an interacting animal because they get everything out based on their facial expressions and their body expressions and the whole thing. And they're not able to do that at this point, but boy, they want to. They really, really do. And we are very much aware of that, and we're going to work on that as well.
Yeah, and I would just add my last little piece here is that using technology can actually help teachers not work harder, but work smarter. And I think that what oftentimes people don't understand is that a technology that feels overwhelming before you understand it can actually cut your work pile in half and make your life so much easier. Just the fact that classrooms just recently added audio commentary, that I could just talk into a document and leave like my voice imprint on the document to the kids. is really, that's all that they really would need. So that's my two
And
cents.
the parents and both the parents and the students thought that the videos and the interactive kind of thing was much better. And we need to get better at that. There's no question in my mind.
Thank you.
But I used the risograph when I started, so
Thank you. Any other questions for Steve? Okay, Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you having me. Can you put me on first the next time?
Yes, you can, next time.
Perfect, thank you.
Put it on my list. Now, do you want to go right into the graduation update, or Brooke, did you have something to say?
That's what I wanted to say. Steve, don't leave us yet because we haven't talked about graduation. So yeah.
Okay, well, we're still working the graduation stuff. As I said, the seniors came in yesterday and it was awesome. Everybody was great. It was great to see the kids. A lot of the faculty wanted to be there, and we didn't want them to come so much because we really needed to get them through those 5 stations, and it worked like clockwork. It really did work very well. I sent out a note. We're going to give a shot. Give the 25th is going to be the date of the live graduation. We're still in the process of working how that's going to work out. We'll get that out to people as soon as we have a better feel for how it's going to work. We're kind of waiting on Desi to give us a little more information, but I'm not overly sure that we're going to get that. So we're going to kind of base it on what we hope can work, and we'll work from there. So that's the graduation.
And Steve, just to let you know, I did send your letter around to them, the letter that you sent out to the parents, so that everybody could see that. And really what that letter did was encompass the guidance from both DESE and the Massachusetts Department of Health. And so there's a lot of things that, we've been talking about, that we've been thinking about, and I think it'll be quite a challenge for us to pull together in terms of making sure that all of those guidelines are met. I mean, seating, for example, has just been enormous. I mean, that's taken up an inordinate amount of our time as we've talked about it and tried to find a resolution with it and what that would look like. And so there's, I think that the memo that you sent out to the family, I think explains it all. We're worried about the heat. We're worried about parts of the track that heat up faster. I think was it 2 or 3 times faster than just regular grass would, for example, but it's like the best that we've got. The sound system right now we're looking at probably out of the press box, so there's a lot of things that we've got to think about. We're not allowed tents right now anyway. We're not or any type of covering. We're not allowed to have water in there. So we said, okay, then we better do this early in the day when it's a little bit more comfortable. So then we thought, okay, we kind of decided on the 9:30 time frame. And we've even talked, do they wear gowns? Like what happens if it's really, really hot? Or what happens if it's a weekend that we need to, and it's a weekend rain, as opposed to just maybe one day it'll rain, maybe one day it won't, or maybe it'll all be good, but there are a lot of things that we're trying to make sure that we've got our head wrapped around here with all of this. What are some of the other things, Steve, that we had talked about? Well, even how the kids receive their diploma, right? It has to be, I think they have to come up to the table and get it off the table. So
right, we're gonna have to kind of lay them out, and the kids will come up and take them. We'll kind of point to them and they'll take them, because we can't have interaction in that regard. And separation during the event is going to be very difficult. I mean, I think yeah, if everybody has to have a face mask. My biggest concern is the heat. I'm a military guy, and I've seen heat injuries, and they're not pleasant. And that's probably my biggest concern, because we can't have water there, which seems crazy to me. But we've got to follow what Desi tells us that we can do and we can't do. So we're going to do the best we can. And I'm a little concerned about the length. So we're going to kind of try to shorten things up to some extent as much as possible.
Very short comments from speakers. We're going to look at very short comments from the speakers, and really to spend the time focusing on the kids getting the diplomas.
Yep. The biggest thing is seeing them walk across the stage. I think that's the most important thing. And if we have to go to some sort of video speeches, that might end up being the case. But again, we're still in the planning process of that, so we'll have to wait and see. We can't have a 4-hour graduation, and it's going to take a lot longer. based on the distances for the kids to be able to walk where they have to walk to. So we've got to, there's a lot of math involved, and I'm a social studies teacher, so I've got to get some math guys helping me out.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Steve about graduation? Boy, again, Steve, I don't know. I'm with Leah. You don't sell yourself short. This has been an incredible year for you. And I worked with Steve 20-something years ago. And I am just so impressed and proud of you and this leadership, because I always wanted him to do, but he loved the kids, loved the classroom. And it is just so great to see you in this position and doing the things you're doing and leading in this way. And your care for the kids and what's best for the kids and how you can make things happen for them is just, it's just so heartwarming and impressive, and very grateful to see that. But that was always you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love the school. I've been here a long time. I don't want to leave. So you guys might be stuck with me for a while.
Well, we won't mind. That's fine. Okay. Anything else for the principals? Okay. Again, thank you so much.
Everybody.
And don't neglect your own self-care, please.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care. Okay. Remote learning update. Dr. McGuire, I think that's you.
That,
No?
that is me.
Oh, okay. You were shaking your head. No.
No, yeah.
No,
I
yeah.
meant to
No,
be-
yeah.
I meant to be shaking my head, yes. Yes. So you just heard from the principals. So I sort of want to talk a little bit tonight in terms of the update around remote learning, in terms of where to go from here, in terms of some of the key takeaways from their survey data, as well as we've got a couple weeks left with classes for our students as they will finish up on the 17th of June, and our work will continue. So in terms of, really taking a look at key takeaways and where we go from here, we're going to continue to focus on that face-to-face and that two-way communication and connections with students, and continue to look at ways in which to do that, particularly over the summer. Since March, we've really expanded that from not starting with the video conferencing to moving to the Google Meet, to providing Zoom accounts for our administrators so that they could hold big meetings with parent groups for such things such as kindergarten registration. And we're going to continue to look at ways that we can do that. We heard about flexibility in scheduling as we move forward, and we're going to have to be looking at that. We continue to find some great online tools. We opened up the Seesaw for K-2 in the primary and the Premier edition so that parents can join on with that, with our Learn platform, and we continue to vet more applications for that. Some strong feedback and key takeaways from the surveys too were about that positive interaction and feedback from teachers was so essential as it relates to social emotional learning for kids, and where as they've been home since March, and that interaction is really key. We also want to take a look at, as Leah mentioned, that technology support for all teachers across the district. So we've just created and finished a survey for all of our teachers in the district that will go out in the next week or so that we can solicit feedback on what they need to further hone their skills, particularly from a virtual perspective and remote learning. So that will inform what we set up for our summer academies and our fall professional development, which a lot could potentially be virtual and building based when we look at the fall. Again, we opened up our Google email accounts. I mentioned that for our grades 3 through 5, the feedback has been wonderful from parents and from teachers, as well as our principals at the elementary level. That's helping students hone the skills of, like Mrs. Friend said, creating an email and what that looks like, and giving kids those skills. So that's another way of communication that we've enhanced. We've continued our focus on digital application resources through the Learn platform. Continuing in our outreach to staff with professional development opportunities for virtual learning, as well as in the use of two-way communication tools as we move forward. Our summer academy is starting to shape up. We're looking at sessions as they relate to video conferencing in different mediums and platforms, new resources for the fall, and particularly the focus around social emotional learning, as that is our big focus on this year moving forward. We've just ordered and in the process of ordering Mark Brackett's Permission to Feel, which is our district read for the year, as he will be visiting us in March as our keynote speaker. He's the director at Yale, the Center for Emotional Intelligence. And just a couple of other things. Our online registration for next year has gone live. So all of our forms are online through PowerSchool. So parents can now do all of the registration forms online by uploading those documents and turning them in through PowerSchool. And we've just finished turning over all of our data into our new TeachPoint system. TeachPoint is a technological platform that will house all of our professional development as well as our teacher evaluation data in one platform. It's going to allow teachers to go on and take a look at all of the variety of professional development opportunities that we offer, sign up for professional development, and also earn their professional development points through this platform. So my team's in the process of being in training on that, and it's going to be a huge advancement in technology in terms of housing our professional development opportunities for teachers. So that's kind of the update with remote learning as it stands now.
Wow. Wow. Questions for Todd? Well, thank you, Todd, for all your work and leadership and keeping the everything running smoothly and supporting folks, and very grateful for all you've done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we have the business manager's report, and that would be Pat Maroney. Hi, Pat.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Tonight I have the March and April treasurer's report for you. As you can see, there's money in the bank and we're doing pretty well. I'd like to also add that kind of an update as to where we are right now. You'll get another report for May pretty soon, seeing as the month has just closed. The treasurer doesn't have the report out yet, but I can tell you that we've received all of our assessments from all of the member towns in full. So that's a good thing. It was at the point where we thought that that might be a challenge for them.
Sure.
And I just wanted you to know that we've received all of that.
Super.
And as far as revenue as a whole, I would see that from what I'm projecting, we should be in a good place. I'm not expecting any kind of revenue shortage so far in the budget.
Okay.
But it's clearly dependent on Chapter 70, the last payment from Chapter 70.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes we don't get that until the 1st of July.
Okay. Brooke, did you want to add something?
Yes, I think, Pat and I've had multiple discussions. Well, we talk very frequently, but I think that I think it's okay, Pat, for us to acknowledge the fact that we are aiming again, of course, to try to put the money back into E&D that we borrowed from this year. And so, we knew it was a really lean year, and we were really nervous of at a couple of points in time, but we've had the discussion, and right now she is projecting that we will be very close to being able to put almost all of it back. Might not be 100% of it, and that's okay. But I think that we're, don't forget, it's critical to remember that we are planning on borrowing $1 million from that same account. So it's critical that we put back as much as we possibly can into that account to be able to withdraw it for next year.
Thank you. Questions for Brooke or Pat?
Pat?
Steve, do you want to be recognized? Yes, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Pat. The refunds, we keep hearing about refunds for the parking fees and all this other kind of stuff. Do we have some firm plans, and do we know how much that's going to take out of our coffers?
Well, most of them have been processed. We're down to the last couple. I think the last group that we're doing now is the parking at the high school. We've processed extended day and kindergarten and preschool. So you shouldn't be hearing from anybody that they didn't get a refund, because
I think they're all just
everybody
closing in and getting it all done. And keep in mind too that those refunds are just for those couple of months. It's not for the whole year or anything like that. So
right.
you're not talking, $1 million worth. Like some of the parking I've had. If I'm wrong, I know you'll let me know. But some of the parking refunds are going to be like $20, $25, or that kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
Yeah.
There have been a couple of emails I'm sure everybody else has seen too, or posts or something like that about that. Do you know how much that, just as a total number, that might add up to the park?
No, I don't have the total
parking-
number right now. But
Yeah,
I
the
can
park-
get that for you, Steve.
Okay, because the parking ones seem to be the ones that a bunch of people, particularly in the high school, parents are complaining
Right,
about.
and we had looked at that in a couple of different ways. We thought we might, give credits to them on their accounts for next year. But quite frankly, it's cleaner and easier to do this, because if something is misapplied, it's just too difficult to track it. So that's why we decided we'd process it this way.
Okay.
So it's not on this warrant, but it will be on the next warrant.
Okay.
Kathy, if I can just make a comment too. I know that people were asking us, but sometimes there's always a time lag between, we had already started that by the time we started to get the questions, because it wasn't an easy process for us to go back to. And by easy, I just mean it was labor intensive. It wasn't that it was hard work. It was just hard to orchestrate. And again, keep in mind that we're running skeletal staff in that building and making sure that we could get everything out in a timely fashion. But no, I think we had talked about this early in the game, and then Pat kind of staged it out for the different, whether it was K, pre-K, it kind of staged it out so that it was sequential and logical.
And it isn't as simple as just writing a check.
Yeah.
Because in order to get things into our system, you have to create a vendor, and it's a big process. It's part of your warrant. So it takes a long time when you have 200 of those at one time.
Any other questions? Leah?
This is the first time I have heard us talk about refunding kindergarten, and maybe I just missed it, but that feels like a large number, or could have been, like $1,000 perhaps a family. So how does that not kick us?
Well, not necessarily a refund of $1,000. Some parents pay by the month, so there wouldn't be a refund unless they had paid for the whole year in advance.
But even if you don't do a refund, you don't collect the receipt. So
exactly.
But you're still paying all of those teachers.
That's exactly right.
Exactly.
You're right.
So how did we make up for that?
Well, I don't think you do. I think in terms of that,
it has to be absorbed by the budget.
Yeah. Those are costs that are incurred as a result of the time that we're in, Leah. You're absolutely right. Thank you for picking that up. You're absolutely right.
I know that we talked about it with extended day, but those costs seemed so much smaller to me, I guess. Yeah. But maybe they were equally large, and we've just absorbed it in a variety of ways.
And extended day is cost recovery. At kindergarten is not. So Mike?
Right.
So just to piggyback off of what Leah was saying, Pat, you said that this kind of thing and other things, I'm sure, have to be absorbed by the budget.
Mm-hmm.
That seems sort of like a murky place to be. I mean, where where do we find the money to handle that, to manage that loss?
Well, Pat, can I just jump in on this? Just
Sure.
quickly? There are other things, Mike, that you need to take into account. I mean, this is so multi-layered. So for example, we're not paying any substitute teachers right now, right? There's a perfect line that you could say, okay, that makes sense, like where you'd have a pocket of money that otherwise you wouldn't. You know, we're getting, like, I'm trying to think of other things. Like we've got, there are a number of
The
lines.
utilities are down.
I was going to say utilities is another thing. Yeah, you know, so we've got there are lines like that, and so we can see that that's where these pieces will probably ultimately be absorbed, because
Right.
we're still going to end up with money to be able to put back into E&D. So there's still a balance that has occurred there.
Mike.
So just as a follow-up, do you get the sense then, and you may have just answered it, although I'd probably, if you did, I didn't understand it. Do you get the sense that in the final analysis, we will be in the plus, in the minus, or basically on balance?
When you say in the plus, are we going to add money to E&D at
Well,
the end of the year?
Yeah, in other words, are we actually not spending as much as we forecasted?
We're not spending as much as we forecasted,
You
correct?
know by how much percentage-wise of the budget, or a hard number?
I don't have a percentage
I don't
right
think
now.
we're there right now, Mike, because I mean, for example, we're still, even as we sit here tonight, we still have not come to agreement with D-Bus. So there are still situations like that that are out there. We still don't know a lot of things about our SPED placements and what we have to pay for that. We still don't know about SPED transportation and what that's going to look like. So we still have some really big pocket things out there still yet that we are still awaiting final guidance on from DESE and the DOR. So I think it would be far too premature for Pat right now to try to come up with any number, because it's just too soon. But what we do know is that we are projecting that we should have the money to put back into E&D that we borrow. That much we know right now. And for us, that for me personally, that's huge, because we needed that money in there for next year. And so there's a certain level of a confidence, a quiet confidence that comes with that. You know, the busing thing too, the other thing that you have to think about is when you're not spending the money, then you're not also getting the reimbursement. The same thing holds true for circuit breaker with, I mean, these are all multi-layered, right? And so if you're not spending the money on paying some of those out of district, you know, if you've got a 200,000 or 300,000, you know, placement, and you're not getting that circuit breaker money back, how does that adjust itself? So there's so many adjustments. It's going to be, I feel badly for Pat, because I think it's going to be just a tremendous process at year end to bring this all together.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you, Pat. Any questions about the treasurer reports from anyone? We ready to move on? Okay, so the updates from the chair. I have just a couple things. First of all, I want to just congratulate the members of the team that put together the presentation for the feasibility study and did the presentation last week. And Leah and Elaine were wonderful presenters, and I think we had a good turnout in all three towns. And I heard that after the Lancaster one, there were a couple of parents that were on the meeting who are doing something that they were talking about the need to get parents to understand what this is, and they were going to do some rallying of folks, I guess, at the elementary level. And if there was a way, Brooke, to get Laura to hook into somebody at the middle school, the same thing, that would be helpful. So I know it was a lot of work. You guys played off each other well. They were excellent questions. And I think in all three towns, from the people that were there, the tone was very much in favor. In fact, there was a slide, what happens if I vote no? And it was all through chat. And so he wrote, why would anybody vote no? So I think that's all positive. But
that was my favorite chat.
I love that. Yeah, there was some good things. But thank you for that. A couple of things I want to make you aware of through MASC, and I actually signed up for this workshop myself today. They have a workshop on June 11th at 7 p.m. virtual, of course. The title is What We Know and What We Don't Know About FY21. And if you go to the website, I was able to register today. Brief discussion, planning for fiscal FY21 was in full swing in mid-March when school closures and the economic picture upended both district goals and revenue assumptions. Given the changed circumstances, school committees can benefit by understanding what we know about the fiscal picture for the next year and where questions remain. DESC Associate Commissioner Jay Sullivan will be on hand to provide any available updates, etc. So if you're interested in that, just go to the website and you can register there. The other thing that I just learned about today, and I feel kind of stupid because I'm on their website a lot, and I don't know if this is a new thing or not, but they actually have a daily newsletter. Did you guys know
I wasn't aware of that either until today. Yes.
Because I don't. Elaine, did you know that? Oh, good. I don't feel bad because usually Elaine is on top of all the MASC stuff. But it's called MASC Daily Ed Newsletter. And again, right on their homepage, you can sign up. And it is specific to Massachusetts. And there's one consulting group that just focuses on education in a broader sense. But you might find it useful. I signed up for that again today too. And then I want to thank Mary, who has worked on the resolution in support of increased federal support and stimulus funding for public K-12 education. She did a wonderful edit job, and we will be presenting it at our next meeting for hopefully approval, and then we will get it in the right hand. So Mary, thank you so much. She sent it to me, and I was talking to Brooke about it, and I said, I can always, Mary just got a hold of it and worked her magic. So it's very, it's clear, it's concise, and appreciate the time and effort you put into it, Mary. Thank you so much. Was there anything else about that Mass Ed, that feasibility, blah, blah, blah? Nope, done. Brooke?
Superintendent report, thanks. I lost it and I just brought it up again. So you heard the principals allude to the student selection. And so we just want to give a huge shout out to our parents for coming into each of our buildings and collecting the belongings. Of course, they didn't get really into the buildings. They just came up to the tables that held the bags for their children. And it was just really nice. And I think the staff that was on site was just really happy to see the children that were in the cars and such. And it was really good. And I know our seniors just did it, I believe yesterday. And that went very, very well too. And you heard actually Principal Colony talking about the 5 stations that each of the kids went around to. So super, super smooth, and it just went really, really well. So special thank you to that, as well as to the district staff. I mean, it was our custodians that went in and out of the lockers and bagged everything, and our secretaries that went in and then, made sure that everything was marked appropriately and then helped to stage everything. I mean, this was such a huge process. I think it took us, I bet you 2 or 3 meetings, Todd, to work it all through to get it to the point that we got it to. So really happy that it went so smoothly. The second item,
we lost Todd.
I'm sorry?
We lost Todd. We lost him, yes. Yeah. We'll have to see if he can get back in.
Okay.
The town, yes, actually, because his last couple, my dad can do the last couple too. The town meetings, just want to quickly allude to the town meetings. Right now, I was in touch with all 3 town administrators today, and there's every intention to go ahead and push these town meetings through on June 22nd. And, I put a little note there that everybody is planning, of course, on the auditorium, for example, in the building. buildings, like of course, Lancaster would be in MRE, Bolton will be at the high school, and Stowe would be at Hale. And then they see each of the town administrators see the spillover going up, because of course everybody will be socially distanced. So you can only get so many people into those auditoriums, and then the overfill, will go over into, depending on the buildings that you're at. For example, Hale, they're looking at going into the cafeteria, and if they need to move it into the gymnasium, then that's what they'll do. Mary Rowlandson, they're looking at the gymnasium and then potentially cafeteria. And at the high school, they're looking at the auditorium and then the upper gym. So that's right now what they're planning out. I am meeting with the town managers Monday morning. And so if there's anything new that I can pass along to you, I'll make sure that I send that out. Reopening of schools, Dr. McGuire and I are going to begin to prepare a memo on this that will go out to the parents. I would tell you in all honesty, unless I don't know if either Leah or Mike would have heard anything more from their superintendents, but right now, Leah have basically indicated that we suspect that we will be going to a hybrid model. We do not know this for a fact. We had a meeting with the commissioner on Tuesday, I believe it was, at 10 o'clock, and he indicated that that's probably where they're leaning. He also said, told us a couple of other things, which I've put in my notes that we'll also include in our note to the parents, that although they will call it probably guidance, in fact, it will be more likely directives this time around, coming from the state saying this is what you will do. They obviously are working very closely with, Mass Department of Public Health. And by the way, even for the graduations, one of the things is that they had said, certainly if you're doing anything before July 19th, you needed to receive approval from your local Department of Health. If it's after July 19th, you should still be working with your local Department of Health. And so we've been including Lisa Goldicki, as you well know, our nurse leader, in on most of our meetings right now with regards to graduation. Lisa is on those meetings as well. Back to the reopening of schools, EEC released a document, and the three branches of education. EEC is really for our youngest learners, and that's like basically up to like 5-6 years of age. It's really intended for that, birth to 5 really is the focus. And then of course, age 5. And then DESE, which is our bailiwick, that's, that's where we get our guidance. The DESE is a K-12, and then of course it's the higher ed. So they're basically the 3 buckets of education. So EEC released theirs, and that makes complete sense because of course they're looking at the potential of starting to reopen some of the child centers and that kind of thing. So EEC would be the guiding force with that, as DESE is with us. What I found interesting about the EEC document today is 32 pages, and there are about several sections where it has plan after plan after plan after plan that we are going to need to do prior to reopening. And so in terms of the EEC, so I suspect the DESE will be the same, because you can easily see the transference between EEC document and what will ultimately be a DESE document. So there are all kinds of plans, whether it's to do with your nursing, whether it's to do with your cleaning, whether it's so many things. How you look at sick time, there's some things in there for HR. So it's really an extensive document, but very prescriptive. And Todd, if I'm saying anything or missing anything, I know that you're gonna chime in here. I think one of the words that continued to come up over and over again in our meeting with the commissioner is the word prescriptive. And so I think that that's what we can expect to see. We know that we will get good guidance, he's assured us, in the next, well, 2.5 weeks from Tuesday. So I would say, probably inside of the next 3-week time frame, we will receive something. One of the things that we can expect to receive next week is our list as such of supplies that we are going to need to be arranging and purchasing. When I say arranging, because I think, it's not going to be just a 1 month supply that they're looking at us doing, they're looking at it being broader than that. So there's going to be a lot of orchestration of what this looks like and what we purchase. And right now, it's very specific. Again, we've just got the hint of what this looks like, but very specific for what the nurses will wear. There's going to be temperature taking. There is going to be a lot of things that is outside of what we would ever have thought of as normal school. We are looking at the potential of a hybrid between time on site and time off site in remote learning, potentially. Again, this is draft right now. We won't know again until it comes out as concrete. Even at that, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, but I believe that will still be considered to be in draft form, even when it comes out, that this is what they are expecting us to do. So I think my biggest concern, and we had a long meeting with our principals yesterday on this, is our scheduling, and what does that scheduling even look like right now for us? Because we all run, our elementary middle schools run on 6 days cycles, our high school works on an 8-day cycle. We see the potential for all of that to change. And our high school schedule is also tied in with the contract. And so we are going to have to work incredibly closely with our unions, because we also see that there will be a change of working conditions that are at play here. So I think that, I'm grateful to the relationship that we have with our union. I did connect tonight with our union president to say, this is what we're hearing from the commissioner. I'm not sure what you're hearing, to compare notes. And so I think that there's a lot of work that is going to have to be done when we get that guidance. What I think is frustrating for us is that we don't have that concrete guidance now. I'm not being critical. I know that everything is data driven, and I understand that. But just it has nothing to do with DESE at all, but in our world, we generally have the new school year wrapped up and organized by about March. To be this close to something that is going to be so potentially dramatically different, is going to be huge for us. So I see a lot of work ahead of us, and you heard Dr. McGuire earlier talking about the Summer Academy and the focus on virtual learning and such, and I think that that's going to be critical to our work moving forward. Lisa Govicki continues to send us regular guidance. Right now, not only just the daily command center information, but also the guidance that's coming out from Mass PH and CDC. So I think that we're pretty well connected with that right now. And our challenge is going to be how does all of this come together? So I see it as being an inordinately busy year, a summer, as we move into the new year. So we will put a guidance document or a document memo for our parents that we'll send out in the next little bit. I think people just need to know that we are working on this, and as the information comes to us, we continue to take that information and build what we can, or try to start work early. For example, when the commissioner first brought up the notion about the taking of temperatures, we immediately reached out to Rob Frieswick. We already have those thermometers in place now. So wherever we can get ahead of some of this, that's precisely what we have done. So I think we are as best poised as a school district as we possibly can be right now.
Okay.
One of the things that has been asked too is about the summer in the fields. And at this point in time, we still are really not officially into phase 2. Schools fall outside of phase 2. So right now we have to abide by the phase two, I get the phase two guidelines. And I think probably like all of us, we're probably all concerned. I mean, we're concerned right now anyway with what we're seeing in our country. There's in terms of the nightly activities that we're seeing around the country and how wrong that is on so many levels, which is what led Dr. McGuire and I to put something out yesterday. And today we issued a press release to our local media. And as wrong as all of that is, it's also exasperated by the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm not sure what the damage is going to be in terms of potential upticks in COVID-19 identification in about the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that certainly worries me. So I'm just putting it out there as a concern that I have right now. We just don't know. So we're doing the very best we can, with the knowledge that we have. And that's kind of where we're at right now at this point.
All right. Anything else?
And I just wanted to say again, thank you too for the MSBA forums. Leah and Elaine, you did just outstanding jobs. Thank you. Thank you to school committee members that stopped in and visited with them and supported them. Tri-Town meeting will be on June 10th at 7 o'clock. I know that Kathy and I will certainly be there. If anybody else wants to join in, certainly we would welcome you.
And they should let you know so they can get the Zoom link.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. And
Okay.
Dr. McGuire, I think you've got just 2 things to wrap up with.
Yeah, just very quickly, you mentioned the piece around social justice and acceptance and the memo that we put out in light of the recent tragic events in Minnesota and the large number of protests around the country. So what we did do in the teaching learning department late yesterday and today is we did create a link that is entitled that. So what we did was provide our memo as well as a variety of resources that tie into social justice, acceptance, tolerism, activism, some historical components up there so that people can access that. And we'll continue that outreach to families and continue to populate that link by providing applicable and available resources through that outlet. And then just finally, with these final couple weeks of school, we just really want to thank our communities because this really has been a collaborative community effort to keep our kids engaged over the last several months. I mean, in the beginning, we thought this was just a few weeks, and it's now turned into several months. And as we know that things will look very differently in the fall. So, we're working very hard at continuing to grow and take the survey data back from our communities, our families, and our teachers so that we can continue to enhance our remote learning and what things will look like in the fall. So it's really just a thank you to the entire community and the support of the school committee during this tough time. So thank you.
I also want to add my support and my thanks to our school committee members. Thank you so much for the support that you've given us and the encouragement along the way. Todd and I are so appreciative. We have a fabulous school committee. We would never take that for granted. We thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to, one of the things go ahead, Mary, go ahead.
So what I wanted to say too is that the memo that went out to families and faculty members under the title Encouraging Tolerance talks about the tragic death of George Floyd and the impact. And it says so much more than Brooke, you were able to say right now. But when you said that things were going on that were so wrong, I also want to balance that with what you put into the memo, that being able to assemble peacefully, there's so much going on that is so right and so appropriate, that it is just such a shame that there have been people who have taken and some of the actions of looting and violence, etc. But I just, because you have it here, I just wanted to highlight, as we think about civic engagement and we think about First Amendment rights, and we want to model for our students, but also for ourselves as we think about our obligation, that there's a lot of there's a lot that is right that is going on because of a terrible injustice to one person, but a systemic problem that is part of our society. So I just didn't want anyone to think that you didn't know all of that, because I know that you do, and I know you've been talking about it, and I'm sure that in curricula, in every way possible, as we go forward as a district, we will be rethinking the way we operate in society, and for people who are Black and people of color, how we need to recognize what they have gone through, and do everything that we can to be there shoulder to shoulder with them. And that's, I mean, so many people have talked about this so eloquently, and I know that everybody has heard it, but I think it's incumbent on each one of us to search our souls and to think about what we have as white privilege and how we can make our society better right now, for ourselves, for everyone, and for our students.
Thank you, Mary. And I just wanted to reiterate how grateful I am to your leadership and Todd's leadership and putting out that statement. And I think the feedback has been very positive, and parents are appreciative. If this were a normal school year, we would mobilize around this very, very differently. And parents, just like with any tragedy, need support often and help. How do I discuss this with my child? How do I help my child make sense of it? So thank you for providing those things for folks. So let's see. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes. I move to approve the consent agenda of June 3rd, 2020, containing the warrants of June 5th, 2020, and the meeting minutes of May 20th, 2020.
Can I have a second, please? Steve seconded. Okay. Elaine?
Yes.
Yes. Kathy? Yes. Joseph?
Yes.
Brett? Mary?
Yes.
And Leah?
Yes.
And Mike? Mike Koresh?
Yes.
Yes. And Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Items for next agenda. We will have an executive session to, Steve, was your hand up?
I was going to give you something for the next session.
Okay, go ahead.
Approval of the minutes of all of the executive sessions we've had this year.
I was just going to say that, so thank you. So we will have that on the agenda. Of course, the superintendent's evaluation, and then I'd like to have a discussion with the committee looking ahead. Yes, Lita.
It's advised me she'll also have the doctor's contract for the next year.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so be thinking, I'll get out a memo, just thinking ahead to next year. I think everybody's coming back and we'll have 3 new members. So hopefully we can have some kind of retreat before September, sometime in August. But be thinking about last year, we did a survey and we review our protocols. Let me know the types of things you'd be interested in having on an agenda in terms of goals. If you want to do another survey, we can do that. So I'm just looking for stuff to be able to think about that. Brooke.
Yes, and I believe we, as Dr. McGuire indicated earlier, we are in the process of purchasing the books for next school year for PD, and we'll make sure that you all have one as well.
Thank you. And again, on the agenda also is the resolution in support of increased federal support. I'll send you the wording for that and the document that Mary has put together. So that. Yes.
Normally we would not elect the chair, vice chair, whatever, at a meeting right after the election if it was held as early as it normally was. This time it's going to be late. Are we going to have a meeting after the 27th of June to bring in the new people and have the election?
Let's
we
put
wait
that on our agenda for discussion next week with next meeting. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so add that, Alita. The need for a meeting after the elections. Elaine?
Two things. The auditor's report, we kicked the can on that a couple times. Is she coming back?
Pat, the auditor.
Yeah, I have not, she has not told me that she's available yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So,
Still waiting on that.
Yeah.
And then I think that we should probably put a running item of racial justice with, you know, perhaps more specifics underneath that for various meetings moving forward. I think that's something that is, one, very pressing, but two, not going to be solved immediately. So if we can have a series of conversations around what we can do as a school district and what we can support individuals to do in the community, I think that would be great. I want to be very clear that I recognize that we all have very limited time and energy, and there's a lot of big issues right now. So I think one of the things that we as a school committee and as a school district, and then very specifically to our communities, need to understand is that if we want this to have the time and attention and the focus that it deserves, we're going to have to deprioritize something else. We're going to have to be willing to sacrifice something in the trade-off in order to really push this to the front and give it the attention it deserves.
That'd be a good discussion to have at our retreat in terms of what that would look like. Yes.
Yeah, especially people in the community to think about what that might look like, because it's going to have to happen.
Okay. Anything else? You know what? I think we're going to bring this meeting in under 4 hours tonight, you guys. I'm very proud of you. It's getting close to under 3 hours, so let me commend you. Really 2 hours, because our regular meeting started at 6. So good job. Good for you.
It's nowhere near your record, Kathy. No,
I'm sorry. You'll never let me forget that. 3 minutes. That was a special meeting. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Elaine.
Yes.
Kathy, yes. Joseph.
Yes.
And Brett. Yes. Mary.
Yes.
And Leah.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Get in touch with me if you want help with the evaluation. If you have any questions at all, I am most